Just after 10 a.m., Raymond Carter guided his black Lincoln Continental into a rest area along I-94, roughly 40 miles west of Lansing, Michigan. Clad in a slate gray suit paired with a light blue dress shirt, he looked every bit like a man on his way to a professional engagement, which he was. A slim leather portfolio rested on the passenger seat, neatly packed with materials for the governor's policy roundtable set for noon. Raymond had spent over 2 decades as a district court judge, widely respected across the state for his calm demeanor and unwavering fairness. But that reputation held no weight when a white state trooper's cruiser rolled up behind him, lights flashing. From inside the patrol car, Officer Jeffers squinted. To him, a black man alone in an expensive car at a rest stop raised red flags. He radioed his partner, Officer Reich, who was only minutes away, but didn't wait before getting out. Raymond, noticing the officer approach, lowered his window and kept both hands on the wheel. "Good morning, officer," he said evenly. "Is something wrong?" Jeffers didn't answer immediately. He scanned Raymond with a look that made no effort to hide its suspicion. "We received a report of a stolen car matching this one's description, leaving a nearby gas station," he said in a flat, curt tone. Raymond blinked, not out of fear but genuine confusion. "That's news to me," he replied. "I just stopped here." "Just stopping here briefly before heading into the city," Raymond added. "If you'd like, I can show you my registration." Instead of accepting, Jeffers stepped back and rested his hand on the weapon at his hip. "Step out of the car, now," he snapped. The tone had shifted. Gone was any pretense of courtesy, replaced by authority and assumption. Raymond's eyes narrowed slightly. He wasn't looking for conflict, but he also wasn't going to argue on the roadside. He opened the door slowly and stepped out, his 6-foot frame steady and composed. By the time Officer Reich arrived, things had already escalated. Jeffers had Raymond positioned at the rear of the vehicle, hands raised, while Reich watched silently, uncertain. "I'd appreciate knowing what I'm being accused of," Raymond said, his voice still controlled but firmer. "I haven't broken any laws." Jeffers offered no reply. Instead, he moved to the driver's side, reached into the vehicle without asking, and began searching the glove box. Raymond stepped forward slightly. "Officer, I do not consent to a search of my car," he said clearly. That was enough for Jeffers. "That's obstruction," he barked. "You're interfering with an investigation." Before Raymond could say another word, Jeffers seized his arm, twisted it behind his back, and fastened a cuff. Reich hesitated, but at Jeffers' nod, she secured his other wrist. Raymond didn't fight back, but his steady voice cut through the growing tension. "You're making a serious mistake." A few travelers nearby watched the scene unfold. A few travelers who had stopped for coffee or to stretch their legs watched from a distance. One of them, a college student on spring break, had already taken out her phone and started filming from across the parking lot. A retired veteran shook his head and quietly said, "That man doesn't seem like someone who's stolen anything." Neither Jeffers nor Reich noticed. Their attention was locked on escorting Raymond to the back of the patrol car, as if they had apprehended a dangerous suspect. Yet Raymond moved with poise, even with his hands restrained behind him. His head stayed high, not out of pride, but out of quiet disbelief that years of honorable service, recognition, and legal knowledge could be dismissed so quickly, reduced to a stereotype and suspicion. Sitting in the rear seat of the cruiser, Raymond stayed silent. His gaze moved beyond the parking lot and past the motionless trees, as if trying to see something greater than the scene itself. He wasn't furious, not yet. He was thinking, calculating. He had an understanding the officers lacked. This would not conclude how they imagined. At the state police station near Jackson, Michigan, Raymond sat in a rigid plastic chair. The cuffs had been removed, but faint red impressions still circled his wrists. The booking officer had checked his ID, but didn't seem to examine it closely, just typed the details as if it were another routine stop. To them, Raymond was just another black man brought in on vague suspicion. His calm, his refusal to shout or protest, only deepened their view of him as suspicious. People who remained composed, who didn't react with anger, were often viewed with suspicion, as if their calmness meant they had something to hide. The officers didn't see Raymond's restraint as self-control. They interpreted it as guilt. Officer Jeffers passed by the holding area multiple times, each time casting a glance in Raymond's direction, his expression edged with irritation. Officer Reich remained quieter, lingering mostly in the background, occasionally appearing uneasy but offering no words. Raymond had now been in custody for nearly 2 hours. No phone call, no explanation, just silence. He had politely asked 3 times to contact his office, making it clear he had an important engagement in Lansing. Each request was dismissed or ignored. Around him, the precinct hummed with quiet conversations, the tapping of keys and sporadic bursts of radio chatter. Officers came and went, casting occasional glances at Raymond, but never engaging directly. Some even exchanged smirks. He didn't look like someone off the street, and they noticed that. His polished shoes, tailored pants, the way he held himself. But rather than commanding respect, it made him an oddity. One officer even mumbled, "Thinks he's somebody." Raymond heard the comment but didn't react. Finally, Jeffers entered the holding area again, leaning against the wall with his arms folded. "So," he said, "you gonna tell us why you were just sitting there with the engine running, scoping the place, waiting on someone?" His voice held a mocking edge rather than real curiosity. Raymond looked up, answering evenly, "I was checking directions on my phone. I've got a meeting in Lansing. That's it." Jeffers snorted. "You people always got a story." Reich, standing nearby, said nothing. Behind him, Reich shifted slightly but still didn't speak. Raymond offered no reply. He recognized the game. They were waiting for him to lose his temper, to give them an excuse to escalate the situation. But he wasn't about to fall into that trap. Years on the bench had taught him how these moments played out. He'd listened to countless stories from young men who never got the benefit of the doubt. He wasn't about to add fuel to that fire. After a while, the shift supervisor, Sergeant Pamela Yates, entered the area. She looked to be in her early 50s, her gray-streaked hair neatly tied in a bun, her eyes sharp and observant. She paused when she saw Raymond. "How long has he been in here?" she asked, her voice directed toward the room in general. "Close to 2 hours," someone at a nearby desk replied. "Obstruction and possible vehicle match." Yates's brow creased and she made her way to Raymond. "Sir, have your rights been read to you?" Raymond gave a single nod. "Yes, ma'am, but I haven't been allowed to contact my office. I've requested several times." She studied him more intently now. Something in the steady, precise tone of his voice made her pause. "What's your name again?" she asked. "Raymond Carter," he replied, "and I strongly suggest someone look that name up before this gets worse." Jeffers, standing behind her, let out a short laugh. "He's been playing the important guy routine since we brought him in." Yates shot him a cold look. "That's enough." Then she turned back to Raymond. "Let me see what we've got here." She walked over to the nearest computer and began typing. It wouldn't take long. Raymond already knew what she'd find. For now, he leaned back, quiet again, waiting for the moment when the air in the room would shift. He could sense it. It was on the way. Sergeant Yates stared at the monitor in front of her. At first, she skimmed the details, expecting a clean record, maybe a traffic violation or two. But as soon as Raymond Carter's profile loaded, her expression changed. Her brow tightened as a detailed list filled the screen. Academic accolades, legal appointments, judicial certifications. Then it registered. Honor, Raymond L. Carter, Presiding Judge, 14th District Court, State of Michigan. Her eyes widened slightly. She quickly checked the photo attached to the file. It matched the man calmly seated in the holding area. She glanced back through the glass to confirm, then returned to the screen, blinking once as the full weight of the situation became clear. She stood up abruptly, the sound of her boots echoing sharply across the floor as she moved toward the holding area. Jeffers was still there, arms folded, looking pleased with himself. Reich lingered nearby, avoiding eye contact with Raymond. Yates said nothing at first. She opened the door and stepped inside. Raymond glanced up, as composed as ever. "You mentioned a meeting in Lansing," she began. "Yes," Raymond said. "At noon. I was invited to speak at a justice reform roundtable with the governor." Yates drew a slow breath. "And you are Judge Raymond Carter?" He nodded gently. "That's right." There was a pause. Then clearly and firmly she said, "Your Honor, I'm truly sorry. This never should have happened." Behind her, Jeffers straightened, confused. "Wait, what do you mean, Your Honor?" Yates turned to face him slowly. You just placed a sitting state judge under arrest without probable cause was absent. You conducted a warrantless search of his vehicle, and you denied him his legal right to contact counsel, Yates said, her voice even but icy. This is a serious matter. Jeffers' composure faltered. He wasn't acting like a judge. He didn't say. Yates cut him off sharply. You had his identification. It was your responsibility to verify it. Instead, you escalated the situation without justification. She turned to Reich. You as well. You helped restrain a man without lawful grounds. Do either of you grasp the implications of this? A tense silence settled over the room. Jeffers opened his mouth, but no words followed. Reich's face had lost all color. Yates looked back at Raymond. Sir, I apologize again. Would you like to call the governor's office now, or would you prefer we arrange transportation for you? Raymond gave a faint smile, not smug, simply worn. Yes, thank you, Sergeant, I would appreciate that. She nodded and led him out of the holding area, her demeanor completely transformed. The energy in the precinct shifted. Officers at their desks glanced up. Some looked confused, others clearly ashamed. The man they had viewed as just another quiet detainee now walked with undeniable authority and his dignity intact. As he exited the station, phone in hand and Yates at his side, it became clear to everyone watching that this incident was far from resolved. By early evening, the first clip had already begun circulating online. A 27-second video taken by a college student at the rest stop. It showed Judge Raymond Carter being placed in handcuffs by Officer Jeffers, calmly asking what offense he had committed. In the background of the video, the student's voice could be heard saying, "This is crazy. He didn't do anything." The clip exploded online, first catching fire on TikTok, then spreading to Twitter and Facebook under the caption, "Man arrested for being black in a suit." Within just a few hours, it had racked up over 500,000 views. By midnight, it had passed 2 million. Local news outlets picked up the story before sunrise, followed closely by national networks. Screenshots of Judge Raymond Carter's official bio were shared alongside still images from the arrest. The contrast between his composed professional appearance and the aggressive way he was treated triggered widespread public outrage. Hashtags like #JudgeCarter, #JusticeForRaymond, and #RestStopProfiling began trending across all major platforms. Civil rights advocates, legal professionals, and elected officials started releasing public responses. Some called for the immediate suspension of the officers involved, while others pushed for broader investigations into the department's conduct. The governor's office, after confirming Judge Carter's role in the planned roundtable, released a brief but pointed statement. We are actively reviewing the situation and remain committed to justice and fairness in all state institutions. Community leaders held press briefings. By late morning, protesters had assembled outside the Jackson precinct, holding signs with messages like "Judged before justice" and "Dignity in cuffs."